Thanks for having me today. My name is Lijun, as Doug just mentioned before. I'm a qualified and experienced urban planner. I'm just finished my PhD at QT. And as part of the Program 1 for Future Food Systems, CRC, under the supervision of Professor Doug Baker, my research is focused on urban food planning in the realm of urban food systems. In today's research showcase, I will share some of my research findings and offer some insight on how does land use planning impact urban food consumption. So first, I'd like to contextualize food challenges on a global scale. We have challenges of rapid population growth and urbanization. Our planet is projected to have 9 billion people by 2050, with the world urban population continuing to rise from current 55% to 70% by then. Yet, urban population already consumes 70% of the food produced, and urban areas contributes to 75% of the greenhouse gas emissions globally. We also have ongoing challenge of climate change, both in Australia and other countries. We also face other mega trends, such as globalization, energy resource scarcity, and environmental degradation, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine. So all these challenges inevitably placing increasing pressure on food provision, food production, and consumption. In particular, a recent report from the United Nations alerted a very slow or regressive progress in achieving the 17 Sustainable Development Goals set by 2030, while the global temperatures already hit 1.1 degrees. The report highlights several key areas lack of progress, such as for number 12, responsible consumption and production is attributable to insufficient policy development and implementation. And similarly, number 13, climate action is due to inadequate policy action. In addition, wealthy nations have been criticized for causing unequal food consumption and climate footprints around the globe. So this brings attention to food policies. Like many other developed countries, food policies in Australia are predominantly administered by the Agriculture Department at the federal and state level of the government. At the local level, though, the land use planning is primarily focused on regulating land use, housing development, or other aspects of urban development, but not on food. So to investigate the impacts of land use planning on urban food consumption, our research involved exploring the public perceptions of food concerning consumption by collecting 500 survey data collected in Brisbane between September and November 2021. So our research findings were achieved by analyzing 5 dimensions of food concerning consumption, and each one will be examining in detail. The first one is urban food security. Food availability was investigated by comparing 2 scenarios. As you can see on your left-hand side, 90% of people were confident with food availability in general. However, that confidence drops to 11% only when faced with extreme events, such as flooding or COVID-19 lockdown period. And this comparison raises a really critical question that how resilient our food provision in our urban environment. We also investigated the physical accessibility to food, and we found that 66% of people drove to do food shopping, and only 37% of people who are driving spent less than 5 minutes. And these results indicate the pervasiveness of car-dependent urban environments, and driving longer than 5 minutes also reflects the dispersed land use patterns and a lack of public transport networks. The economic accessibility is also problematic. 48% of people agreed with food affordability, in contrast with 90% of food availability, as you've seen before. When it comes to the household spending on food, only 58% of people spent less than a third of their household income. The public's perception for food insecurity also returned 46% of people believing that this issue does exist in Australia. The second dimension focuses on urban food epidemics by exploring the factors causing obesity or overweight. The first factor is food shopping preference. We only had 57% of people preferred to spend more on fresh and healthy food. The second factor, shopping frequency for non-essential food, returned more than 30% of people shopped quite frequently or all the time. So to understand the reasons for such shopping habits for discretionary food, the responses returned with 30% of people selecting convenient, 21% accessible, 20% available, 17% delicious, and 12% always on specials or affordable. It's encouraging to see that 82% of people are aware of the consequences of over-consuming discretionary foods causing obesity or overweight. The third dimension is food justice, and we investigated culturally relevant and diverse foods by comparing its availability and affordability. Once again, descending from 72% to 42% represents a similar pattern to fresh and healthy food. And those patterns highlight that food affordability becomes an increasingly urgent issue for many urban consumers. We also explored various food rights and food charity experiences and found that 90% of people agreed that everyone has a right to access fresh and healthy food. 91% also agreed that fresh and healthy food should be made available, accessible, and affordable to everyone. Unfortunately, half of the respondents indicated food charity not available to them or the people they know when encountering financial hardship. The fourth dimension is about the food economy's negative externalities. We found that 78% of people shopped food in supermarkets. And this indicates the monopoly of supermarkets in the food retail sector. However, 63% of people expressed support for more supermarkets to increase competition, and 68% of people for more smaller scale food retail shops or markets. And those responses emphasize the issue of supermarkets' monopoly, as well as the subsequent reduction in food choices and diversity. The last one is food-induced ecological integrity. And public perceptions returned positive results across several aspects. The first one is that 71% agreed that the impacts of food waste and loss are detrimental to climate change. And 77% of people agreed that food companies should improve their business practices to address or mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. And 69% of people agree that food waste infrastructure should be provided in their neighborhoods. So by investigating the impacts of land use planning on food consumption, our research concluded several highlights. The first one is that land use planning without prioritizing food has negative impacts on urban food consumption. In particular, the dispersed land use patterns and low-density urban development can weaken food security and generate unsustainable food consumption. And finally, we suggest food-sensitive land use planning as a pathway to achieve the UN's goals of responsible consumption and production and climate action. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.